Don't throw away your wilting orchid before trying this. Today, I want to share a case I encounter very often, and I believe many of you here have experienced it too. Orchids bought for greenhouses initially bloom beautifully. But after the flowers fade, due to unfamiliarity with their care, the plants weaken. Look closely at these leaves and you'll see a lot of mold. These patches of mold will gradually eat away at the leaves, turning them black, weakening the plant, and causing it to rot slowly if not treated promptly. These patches of mold will gradually eat away at the leaves, turning them black, weakening the plant, and causing it to rot slowly if not treated promptly. The first thing I do is cut off all the damaged and infected leaves. Seeing a plant like this, many people would rush to throw it away. You can see that the green leaves on the plant are still alive, and there's still a chance to save it. As you can see, the root system is almost completely gone. The flower stalks have also completely withered and are no longer able to nourish the plant. As long as the leaves are still green, there's still a way to save it. Next, I proceeded to remove the entire growing medium to check the plant's true condition. Upon removal, you'll immediately see where the problem lies. This is a greenhouse growing medium, primarily moss, only suitable for a properly controlled humidity system. When brought home and planted in a garden, this type of medium easily retains water for too long, causing the orchid roots to rot and almost completely destroy them. Therefore, I completely removed the plant from the moss, discarding all the old growing medium. Looking closely, you'll see the roots are rotten, covered in mold, and almost all the healthy roots are gone, with only a few remaining. After thoroughly removing the plant, I will proceed with the next steps to treat and save the orchid. In the next step, I took out a pair of scissors to begin pruning. I started by cutting off all the withered flower stalks, discarding any sections that were beyond saving. Then, I focused on the roots at the base, trimming them little by little. Any part that is brown, black, soft, or has an odor indicates damaged roots and must be discarded. Continue cutting until only the white, clean tissue remains visible. Doing this eliminates the source of disease and allows the surviving parts to regenerate new roots. At this point, I cut off all the rotten parts of the stem and completely removed any blackened areas, leaving nothing behind. By this time, you'll clearly see that the remaining stem is starting to show fresh tissue, and the leaf stalks are still green and firm. That's a sign that the plant is still alive. Next, I will guide you on how to make young roots grow from a single leaf. Please watch carefully. Next, I took the orchid out and thoroughly cleaned it with clean water. I rinsed it carefully to wash away any dirt and mold clinging to the leaves and stem. Once the plant is cleaned, the surrounding environment becomes more airy, which is crucial for the orchid to begin to recover. I always consider this a detoxification step for the plant after a long period of fungal disease. After rinsing, I let the plant dry, then prepared to proceed with the next steps to continue caring for and restoring the orchid. Next, I prepared a clean container. Then, I poured in exactly 1,000 milliliters, or 1 liter, of clean filtered water. Next, I used potassium permanganate to disinfect the orchid. I added exactly 10 drops of potassium permanganate. Potassium permanganate has excellent antibacterial and antifungal properties, and it also helps stimulate the orchid's recovery and growth when used in the correct dosage. After adding the potassium permanganate, I stirred well to completely dissolve the solution. Next, I took out a clean pot and gently placed the orchid inside. Once the plant was settled, I began adding the prepared solution. Potassium permanganate solution is a very strong antibacterial and antifungal agent, especially effective for orchids that have been severely attacked by fungus. I soaked the orchid leaves in this solution for about 30 minutes. In the next step, I use an orange. Oranges are a great natural ingredient for orchids, especially the peel, which is rich in vitamin C and nutrients with antibacterial and antifungal properties, helping the orchid recover after being weakened. I only use half an orange. I set the rest aside, not using too much because orchids need the right dosage. This is a natural source of support that helps the orchid regain its health, increase its resistance, and prepare for the next stage of recovery. Next, I prepared a clean cup. Then, I squeezed the orange juice directly into the container. Orange juice is rich in natural nutrients, especially natural sugars and essential substances that help the orchid plant gain energy during its recovery phase. After squeezing, you can see that there's just enough orange juice, not too much, but the essential substances are important. Next, I sliced the oranges into thin slices to prepare for the next step. Doing so allows the nutrient in the oranges to be released more easily, enabling the orchids to absorb them better in the following steps. This is how I maximize the nutrients from the oranges, making it both safe and effective for the orchids. In the next step, I prepared a clean container. Then, I put all the processed orange peels into the container. In the next step, I use 500 milliliters of water. The purpose of this step is to help release the nutrients faster, so that the essence in the orange peel is extracted most effectively. Then, I stirred gently, let the solution stand, and began the incubation process. I let it steep for about an hour. In the next step, I soaked the orchid leaves in potassium permanganate solution. Next, I took a soft cotton cloth and wiped the orchid leaves one more time. I carefully wiped both the top and bottom surfaces of the leaves to ensure all mold and dirt were completely removed. Once cleaned, I placed the plant outside, preparing for the next step in the orchid's care and recovery process. After an hour, you can see that the orange juice has been extracted. All the essence from the oranges and peel has permeated and dissolved into the water. At this point, I prepare another clean container and filter out all the sediment. I only keep the clear, clean, and nutrient-rich liquid. Thus, I have a glass of pure orange juice, ready to use for further care and recovery of the orchid in the next steps. In the next step, I use freshly strained orange juice. I take exactly 1 teaspoon and add it to the previously prepared solution. I always use the right amount, because with orchids the correct dosage is essential for effectiveness. In the next step, I added vitamin B1 to the solution. Vitamin B1 has a very strong root-stimulating effect, helping the orchid quickly recover after being weakened. I added exactly 3 vitamin B1 tablets, no more. After adding the B1, I stirred well to dissolve all the ingredients. Then, I let the solution rest for about 15 minutes, allowing the vitamin B1 and orange juice to completely blend, forming a liquid fertilizer that is easily absorbed. After 15 minutes, I took the orchid out to begin direct care. I took a soft cotton ball, lightly dampened it with nutrient solution, and wiped the top surface of the orchid leaves. This step helps the nutrients gently penetrate the leaf surface. After wiping, I placed a plant in a well-ventilated area, preparing it for the next steps to help the orchid recover. Next, I prepared a clean container and gently placed the orchid inside. Then, I poured the orange juice solution mixed with vitamin B1 into the container. I submerged the orchid so that only the roots were fully submerged, not the entire plant. The purpose was to allow the roots and base to directly absorb the nutrients, stimulating recovery from within. I let the plant soak for about 25 minutes. In the next step, I didn't throw away the leftover nutrient solution. I took it to the garden and used it to continue caring for the other orchids. This is a natural fertilizer that I made myself, very safe and gentle on the plants. It's economical, effective, and most importantly, the orchids thrive sustainably with proper care. Next, I went to the garden and started spraying all the orchids with this nutrient solution. When the orchids are regularly nourished, you'll see a very clear difference. Orchids that have absorbed enough nutrients bloom beautifully, with vibrant, rich, and smooth colors, thick petals, and plump blooms, not thin and weak ones. Not only the flowers, but the root system also develops strongly, with many long, clean roots, a sign of a truly healthy orchid. Look at these clusters of bright red flowers. The flower stalks are large and sturdy. Some even have 2 flower stalks at the same time, proving the plant is vigorous. When orchids are healthy, the flowers last longer, the colors are beautiful, and the flowering period is longer. With this care method, I maintain it every 2 weeks. Consistent and correct care will result in tall flower stalks, abundant root growth, and robust vitality throughout the year. After soaking for 25 minutes, I gently lifted the orchid out. By this time, the roots had fully absorbed the nutrients, and each tissue was beginning to drink the nutrients it needed. Next, I used a soft cotton cloth to wipe the plant dry, especially the leaves. Once the plant was dry and tidy, I set it aside and continued with the next care step. Next, I took the orchid out and prepared a jar of pure cinnamon powder. This is something I always keep on hand in my garden, because cinnamon powder is a very strong natural disinfectant and extremely safe for orchids. I lightly sprinkled the cinnamon powder on the areas that needed treatment, especially cuts and scratches on the plant. The cinnamon powder will help disinfect, fight fungi, and help the wounds dry and heal quickly, minimizing the risk of rot later on. Once disinfected, I've set the plant aside to allow the wounds to dry before planting. Next, I took out a vase. Then, I cut a piece of floral foam, adjusting it to fit snugly into the bottom of the vase. This foam will help maintain stable moisture for the plant, which is crucial during the orchid's recovery phase. I placed the foam inside the vase, then gently moved the disinfected orchid, whose wounds had completely dried, into position. Next, I took a bottle of clean filtered water and poured it into the vase, just enough to cover the bottom, not submerging the foam. The water from below will slowly seep up into the foam, which will absorb the water and maintain even moisture. Then conduct the moisture upwards to the orchid's roots. Next, I took a clear plastic lid with ventilation holes and placed it over the orchid pot. This lid helps create a stable, humid environment while still allowing air circulation for the plant to breathe. The purpose is to prevent insects, bacteria, and mold from entering, especially when the orchid is weak and very susceptible to disease. Every 5 days or so, if I saw the water level at the bottom was low, I would add more water. Finally, I moved the plant to the garden, placing it in a shady, well-ventilated area with gentle light. After 3 weeks, I checked again and was truly delighted. The orchid had started growing again, with new roots clearly visible. An orchid that seemed destined for the afterlife had miraculously revived with just patience, proper care, and a little meticulous. At this point, I gently took the plant out to check on it. Seeing that the water had run dry, I added more clean water, maintaining just the right amount of moisture for the roots to continue spreading, growing longer and stronger. Looking at the newly formed roots, I believe this orchid will become even more beautiful in the future. Afterward, I continued to lightly mist the roots and leaves, helping the plant retain the necessary moisture for stable growth. I always use clean filtered water to limit mold and harmful bacteria. Next, I placed the plant back in its original location, still in a shady, well-ventilated spot with soft light. Once a week, I'd lightly mist the leaves with nutrients, keeping the plant moist, healthy, and free from fungal infections. The results after the next 2 weeks when I checked again were truly encouraging. The orchid had clearly revived. The roots were now long and strong, and what made me happiest was that a new shoot had begun to emerge, a sign that the plant had returned to its normal growth cycle. Looking at the orchid at this point, I became even more convinced that with proper care, patience, and dedication, even seemingly hopeless plants can thrive again. Now, I moved the orchid outdoors to prepare for replanting. This is a crucial stage, as the plant now has long roots and new shoots have emerged on the leaves, strong enough to adapt to the new environment. Thus, from a weak orchid with almost completely damaged roots, it now has new shoots and renewed vitality. All that's needed is continued proper care, and the orchid will become healthier and soon produce beautiful flowers again. For the next step, I began planting the orchid outdoors in its natural environment. First, I chose a pot with many drainage holes. This is very important, as orchids cannot tolerate water. The growing medium I used was shredded pine bark, which is clean, allows for good root aeration, and is very similar to the orchid's natural environment. Then, I placed the orchid in the pot, gently adding pine bark around it, adjusting it as I went to ensure the roots were neatly positioned and not bent or damaged. Next, I took a small metal rod, bent it into a U-shape and gently secured the base of the plant. This helps the plant stand firmly and prevents it from swaying in the wind or during watering. After that, I cover the rim of the pot with a layer of moss to retain moisture. The purpose is to attract new roots and maintain stable humidity for the orchid during its initial adaptation period. Finally, I gently secured the stem with clips to prevent it from moving. Next, I laid a thin layer of moss over the rim of the pot. The purpose is to maintain stable moisture and create favorable conditions for the orchid's young roots to continue developing. I gently placed and covered the roots within the moss, preventing them from drying out and helping them to firmly establish themselves in the growing medium. At this point, I had completed planting an orchid. At this stage, I didn't rush to fertilize. I only watered and misted the plant with clean filtered water. Every 3 days, I lightly misted the leaves with filtered water, just enough to keep them moist without waterlogging. As for the natural fertilizer I prepared earlier, I only used it once every 14 days. Caring for orchids at this stage requires patience, gentle handling, and consistent humidity. Next, I water and mist the orchids with clean, filtered water every 3 days. This ensures the plant receives enough nutrients. The moisture on the leaves and stems is maintained without excess or fertilizer shock. During this period, I move the plants to the garden, placing them in a shady, well-ventilated area with gentle light. I don't cover them, allowing them to fully expose to the natural environment. The leaves can naturally receive light, photosynthesize more effectively, and grow sustainably. What do you think of this orchid care method? Don't hesitate to leave a comment and share your thoughts. I really want to hear your feedback and experiences. Every share from you is a valuable source of motivation that helps us learn and love plants more each day.